Well, if you're that impressed by me, you're going to be really impressed by tonight's guests. My name's Jenelle Riley. I'm an editor at Variety. I'm so thrilled to welcome you to this Q&A with Starz' Counterpart, and to welcome an actor who can play anything from an abusive music teacher to J. Jonah Jameson to an Eminem. He is, of course, a 6-time SAG Award nominee. He won the SAG Award for Whiplash. He pretty much won every award there is out there. They had to start creating new ones to give him. And I literally don't have time to name them all, but they do include the Golden Globe and the Academy Award. Please welcome J.K. Simmons.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here. Where's your co-star? The other guy.
He's here.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I'm sure that joke gets old pretty fast. This is an audience of SAG actors, so I actually...
Yay, hi.
Yeah.
I know there are familiar faces out there.
Yeah. Oh,
many
really?
of whom
Yes. Well, you've worked with everyone in this business. You've probably worked with half this room.
I'm sure I have.
But I always like to start by asking, how did you get your SAG card?
I got my SAG card for a movie I wasn't in.
Oh, I love that.
I was doing theater in New York, and I don't remember how the call came about, but I got a call to be naked in a locker room in Wall Street. Right? Is that the name of the movie? Michael Douglas.
Yeah.
Greed is good, and it was like, yeah, it's technically background, but it's going to be an upgrade because they're gonna, so it's all going to be great. So I went out and paid like a lot of money for my SAG card, and then they pushed the date, and I was like, I'm doing a play in Pennsylvania, I can't. And so yeah, it was like 2 years after that I got my first SAG job.
Wow. And this time you actually did it.
I did actually do it, and I was not naked. Yeah. And I even spoke. Yeah.
And what was that?
I don't know.
Just say Law and Order.
Law and Order.
Yeah.
It probably was.
Yeah.
It was New York.
Exactly. 9 times out of 10 for New York actors, the answer is Law and Order.
Yeah.
You actually are kind of an anomaly. You've been in 3 different Law and Orders, maybe more.
I was in 3 Law and Orders and played the same character on a show called New York Undercover. So
You're kidding.
Dr. Skoda was on 4 different shows. Yeah.
Wow. And you did Law and Order as a different character originally.
Yes, originally I was a day player doing playing a news cameraman. I had a scene with Jerry Orbach, God bless him, and Ben and Jerry, and Jerry. God, you look up Mensch in the dictionary, and there's Jerry. I was doing Guys and Dolls on Broadway at the time, and I get to thank you. And ladies and gentlemen, Nathan Lane, and I got my little day player thing, and Jerry was so generous and welcoming, and the scene was shooting right after lunch, I think, or whatever. And we're chatting, and Jerry's as everybody knows, a guy who came from theater, and talking about, he goes, oh my God, oh Guys and Dolls, oh that's where I saw you, oh what a great show, and blah 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 blah, and and he goes, this is after we've shot a couple of shots already, and he goes, well, have you left the show? Are you still with the show or something? I go, oh yeah, I'm hoping I can make the curtain tonight, and he looks at his watch, and he goes up to the director. He goes, hey, can we move it? This guy's got a real job to go to. Let's knock this shot out so J.K. doesn't have to miss a curtain tonight and miss a paycheck.
Oh, that's amazing. So all that time ago, I don't even know how long ago that was, but now you're back on TV in Counterparts. What attracted you to this project?
Really, I was attracted to it. People don't believe this when I say it. Before I realized that it was 2 worlds and playing 2 parts and 2 versions of the same human, because I've asked my agent not to ever send me. I don't want to know details. I don't want to know synopses, log lines. I just want to see a script and read a script and let it hit me or not. So I was reading along, and I'm looking at the part of Howard, and I'm thinking this is a really interesting character, and he's created this amazing world, this sort of Fritz Lang dystopia, and this character is so sad, and just wondering where it's going to go, and then boom, we get to that scene in page 18 or whatever, where, oh, by the way, there's a parallel universe, and there's two versions of the same guy, and this one is quite different from that one. And I had a visceral reaction sitting there reading the script, which most audiences don't get because the marketing department already tells you what you're about to see. And read through the rest of the script, and then immediately went back and read through the rest of the script from other Howard's point of view, and thought, wow, this would be really fun.
I mentioned that you began your career in TV, or not began, you worked on stage as well, but obviously you were in all the Law and Orders. You spent 7 seasons on The Closer, I think. But then you went off and became a big fat movie star. So was there any, actually, sorry, a very trim movie star.
Actually, well, never mind. Somebody was just, a couple of buddies and I were just texting, and I texted a picture of, whatever, me being slim and trim and, at the gym. And he sent me a picture of me 90 pounds heavier, which sort of gradually happened over the years, and in a movie called New in Town, where I deliberately put on the last 40 pounds because I was asked to. And by the way, don't ever, because it's not comfortable if that's not your natural vibe. So yeah, I was a big fat movie star. Yeah.
I would say still are, but was there any hesitation about returning to TV? I mean, I think the lines are so blurred now.
Well, that's the thing, really. I mean, there, I had done, sort of standard. I don't want to be demeaning at all, but procedural drama. I'd done a couple of sitcoms. I really loved The Closer. It was a good, smart show, but I wasn't in a hurry to go back to, sort of standard, network style TV. I just really responded to this script, and when we met, I actually tried to talk my way out of it for a variety of reasons. One of which was they wanted to shoot in the whole thing in Romania or something, and I said, I love this script. I'd love to work with you guys. I'm here because I wanted to meet you, but I got a wife and kids and a life, and I want to work in L.A. So sorry. And there were these furtive glances around the table with the producers and the writer, and Morton Tilden looked at me and said, I can shoot L.A. for Romania.
Wow.
And I went, wow, you win some trophies and stuff happens,
I was actually going to ask about that. So that was after you won the Oscar? Because I know this.
Yeah,
this
it was around that time.
Yeah.
I think it was either right before or shortly after. But it was during that whole awards, ridiculousness that sort of ramps up into the Oscars. But ridiculousness in a good way.
Yeah. Sure, if you're winning.
Yeah.
The other guys might say differently.
Yeah. Ruffalo was a little pissed off, but
That's hilarious because he's the nicest man in the universe.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
That's why I mentioned him.
Exactly. That actually raises a question I was curious about, because you're so recognizable and been in this business for a long time. When was the last time you had to audition for a part?
Well, it's been a while, and I know, please, it's unbelievable not having to audition. Oh, my God. I mean, it's amazing. And when it first started happening, years ago, when my agent would call and say, hey, we got an offer, and I was like, what? How does that happen? And why doesn't it happen more often? Because that's really cool, even if it's terrible. I mean, let's look at it. I don't remember the last time I auditioned. I do remember an audition before I'd ever been on television for a play, where with the first time that a director at an audition actually knew who I was from other theater work. This is before Broadway. This is when I was doing regional theater all over the country. And it was a director who shall remain nameless of a big theater company, regional theater company, and they were doing a Shaw play, and A Man and Superman. And I went in with my material that I'd learned and blah 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 blah, and I was sure I was going to be great. And and instead of just saying, okay, do your thing, he said, Mr. Simmons, I really enjoyed your work. And he named like a couple plays he'd seen me in, like in Buffalo and Atlanta and whatever, and I was like, what is happening? and kind of went on and really, made me feel really good about myself. And then he said, we have to do the audition. So, if you wouldn't mind, read the scene. And I read the scene, which I thought it was brilliant. And he said, thanks for coming in. I didn't get it.
So you didn't get to do Man and Superman.
I did not do Man and Superman.
Well, now you get to work with Superman, so joke's on them.
That is true, yes.
Yeah. He's Commissioner Gordon, in case you didn't know. Or maybe you just didn't like my joke. That's cool, too. So once you signed on, did you have to take on any special preparation for the role? I don't know, like, if you're someone who prepares, from the ground up or something like this, you could...
Well, I do like researchy stuff or specific stuff if it seems necessary. I actually spent days in the New York Post before the first Spider-Man movie.
Really?
To just get a big city newspaper vibe. But I don't always. There wasn't specific research stuff for the Howards. It was just getting into each guy's head, and as people know, there's a different. In long form storytelling, it's like you don't know where you're going really, which is freeing. But you need to know where you're coming from and where you want to be going. And I just did that twice, for these two guys, and tried to get into, what is their psychology, what is their emotional life, and take it from there.
We actually have a question from Craig Reed. Oh, right there. Wants to know, how do you prep for two twin characters with different personalities and not fall into one character while doing the other? Also, your Farmers commercials are very sharp.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I kind of what I just said, really. I mean, to me, it's an emotional and a psychological thing, and an objective thing. What does each guy want, and how does he feel about himself and about the world around him, and I found that just sort of naturally manifested itself in physical ways that I hope were subtle. It was my goal to differentiate them in. And I thought, we ended up after we took that meeting and we said, great, we're going to work together. It was a year and a half before cameras were rolling, because we were waiting for this and that and timing and writing scripts and Morton's schedule and my schedule and blah, blah, blah. So there was a lot of time for Justin to write and for me to have stupid ideas and discard them. And it was like, oh, well, this one has a mustache, or this one, has, different teeth, because they have a better dentist on the other side, or, all these little physical, things that could be different. And at the end of the day, it was just, no, they're living in the same body. Mm-hmm. And they just have over the last 30-ish years, become different guys in the way they inhabit it.
But did you ever, the first part of the question, did you ever get confused when you were playing one and you forgot what they knew, or,
No, I did. Believe me, the plots began to overwhelm me as we went along, because the original plan was, shoot it like an episodic. We're going to do the first episode, second episode, shoot the whole thing, and then go to do some Berlin work, and clean up all the exterior things and this and that. Like the second day of shooting, we had technical malfunctions, and they were like, okay, tomorrow we're pulling up a scene from 108 where you're this guy, but you're pretending to be that guy, and they blah, 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 blah. So it became like shooting a 10-hour feature, out of order, and plot things that it's like, I haven't read those episodes yet, so just tell me what I know and what I don't, and
And who was keeping track of all that, Justin, or?
Well, not me.
Yeah.
But in the moment, I never found myself sort of in the middle of a take going, who am I? It was, at least not so far, not something.
And I want to talk about this amazing cast you work with, because I love Olivia Williams. You get to share scenes with her, and Stephen Ray, who we don't see enough of. Were any of them on board when you signed on?
No, I was, which was a weird experience for a journeyman character actor to be the guy that attaches, and then they start putting it all together. So, and I was part of those conversations about a lot of these actors. We're thinking about this woman to play your wife, or that actor for this part, or and Olivia, for example, I was jumped right on board with that one, and Stephen Ray, awesome. It's been, and because of the nature of the show and the story, a very international cast, and really, really diverse in a sort of every way you can use the word diverse.
And what's it like to be number one on the call sheet?
Yeah, number one
number two.
and 1A.
Yeah. Do they really? I wondered about that.
I'm trying to think if it's the very first time. It might be the first or second time. It's uncomfortable for a guy like who's not used to that, great.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways, but also sort of there's a weird, when you're like walking onto a sound stage, and like when I was on the closer, I was number 2 on the call sheet. And I'd be walking onto a sound stage, and the grip would be walking off, and it'd be, "Hey, how you doing?" And everybody would go. And now that I'm number 1, and maybe it's the trophies too. I don't know, because it was the same sort of time period. But I come walking anywhere, and people are bowing like I'm the King of France, and I just can't get out of my way fast enough. And it's just kind of weird sometimes. It's like I'm the same dude that I was.
Maybe you should stop wearing the Oscar on a chain around your neck. That might be.
It's just a replica. It's not the whole big one.
I am curious, though, because you've spent so much time on sets. You've probably learned from people who set by example. You've probably been on sets where the number one, really set the tone, and sometimes that wasn't a good tone. Did that teach you sort of how you wanted to be if you were ever in that position?
I don't think I really thought of it that way. I certainly worked with a lot of number ones that were great examples. Brad Pitt, Tom Hanks, George Clooney, and some who were less good examples. I didn't really consciously think, when I'm number 1, I'm going to behave like Tom. But I guess I did. I took that in, and I'm the guy that my mom and dad raised me to be, I hope, and I just try to treat people like people,
What is the hardest thing about working on a series? And I know it's a little different because it's 10 episodes as opposed to networks doing 22, but...
Yeah, but it's really just, and this is like wah, 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 and I get that, but it's just the hours. The hours that show business in general has come to accept as normal, and of course, as actors, we always want to work. We want to work, and when we find ourselves working and doing it with good people and making money and like the trifecta, then that's awesome. But for us, for the crews, for everybody, it's like a 14-hour day shouldn't be normal. That's not. We're not curing cancer. We're not sending people to Jupiter. And especially on a series. When you're doing a feature, it's like it's 8 weeks, and when you're doing a network show for, God knows, 40 weeks a year, or even this show, it's only 10 episodes, but we started in February and we wrap in September.
Wow.
Really? And this show is not different from any other show. It's just that I'm number 1 and 1A. And so I'm there almost as much as the crew. Mm-hmm. And it wears you out. And if you got a family and a life, it's just the hours that get to kind of wear on you after a while.
I have another question from the audience. It looks like David Beeks, is that correct? Back there. Hi. Wants to know, how long did it take for you to feel comfortable as a working actor, i.e. get into your groove as an actor?
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was very, very gradual for me because I fell in love with acting when I was in college, studying music actually, and went and did some summer stock in Montana, and which is where I was in college, and thought this is amazingly fun and great, and I think I might be able to learn how to be less horrible at it, and at that time I thought, wow, you know what? If I could maybe teach and do summer theater for the rest of my life, that would be awesome. Got out of college, moved to Seattle, which was a booming theater town at the time, and did, waited tables, washed cars in the rain, had the variety of, telephone soliciting, cold calling, had some horrible, day jobs and had some fortunate breaks and did some plays. Almost 5 years there. Went to New York with just nothing but hopes and dreams, and spent a year waiting tables there. And stumbled into a regional theater job. And I mean, This is a really long-winded answer. There were many times all through there. When I got my first play in Seattle, Once Upon a Mattress, playing.
I love that play. Were you Dauntless?
I was Sextimus, the Mute King. But the director, I had auditioned. I'd done the singing, and which I did well, and I'd done the dancing, which I do less well. But I was goofing around at the dancing audition and making people laugh, which is what you do when you can't dance worth a damn. And the director actually pulled me aside at like the callbacks and said, "There's 3 parts I could cast you in. One of them was Sir Harry, the baritone,
Sure.
Which was kind of, in my, groove zone, and then the jester, I think, and then the mute king, and he basically said, "Which part do you want?" And I was like, "Well, Sir Harry's, I would be very comfortable playing that because it's stand there and sing, and the jester part would be fun." And I said, "Dude, whatever. I just want to be a part of the thing." And I ended up playing Sextimus, the Mute King, who finally speaks at the very end of the show, and just being pantomiming and silly and goofy, and which was great because I had come from Montana as this sort of musical theater. I'm going to play the lead in Brigadoon or Showboat or whatever, and stand there and sing, and still had some hair and it was a great introduction to Seattle audiences because the show was a big splash. It was a great production, and I was introduced as not the guy who stands and sings.
Yeah.
So then my next show, when I did sing, people were, "Oh, the dude who was funny and silly and goofy can also do this." And then another director cast me in a Joe Orton play, which was so in a very short amount of time, I had this reputation in that small theater community as a versatile guy, which is what we mostly, I think, want to be as actors, have a variety of work. And a different version of the same thing happened in New York with different casting directors who saw me in different ways. So in my regional theater days, which was like a decade, I was able to go off and do a Shakespeare play or a new drama or a musical or a comedy or whatever, and keep some variety in my work.
Why did you leave Seattle? Because you wanted to try New York? Or was that
I left
scary?
Seattle. I did a new musical in Sun Valley, Idaho. There were some Montana connections. It was a story called Cowboy about a Montana artist named Charlie Russell, playing the title character, and that was gonna, the writers were from New York, the leading lady was from New York, and they were like, "We're gonna take it to Broadway, and we're not gonna hire a bunch of New Yorkers for it. It's gonna be all of us cowboys from out west,
Oh,
and it's
dear.
gonna be great." And
Yeah.
and come on out to New York, and I came on out to New York, and waited tables for a year, and Cowboy never happened, but other things, finally did.
Oh, wow. I thought you were going to say that they took it to New York and recast everyone.
Yeah, no. Tommy Tune played the part, and
We have a question from Crystal Martin. Hello. Wants to know, what's been your greatest challenge in the course of your career, and your most challenging role?
greatest challenge I think is finding balance between work and life, and really I was very fortunate that during all those years, which people sometimes refer to as the years when I was struggling, but when I was like, dude, I was making a living mostly as an actor and not waiting tables a lot. and I was doing regional theater for $240 a week, and going here, there, and everywhere, and barely making enough money to pay rent on a crappy sublet in Hell's Kitchen, but loving it, because it's what you love to do. And I didn't. I was, girl in every port, kind of. I was a rambling guy on the road, and just having a good time. It didn't have no responsibilities. I didn't have a wife or kids to worry about supporting until I was, pushing 40. And coincidentally, that was about the time I actually started making some money and doing Law and Order and this and that and the other things. So that, as my wife and I, and she was an actor, we met doing theater together. And when she was pregnant with our first, she said, "Okay, this is it. I'm a full-time mom now." Especially after he was born. Because she was talking about going back and forth and getting, staying in it, but it was important to her to be the mother. So that was just as I was doing Oz and Law and Order and was like Zoom. I was going to places that I hadn't imagined in my career, and finding that balance, especially when number 2 was born 2 years later. To have this career and feel sort of the responsibility, the sort of traditional, white Anglo-Saxon Protestant male, brought up in a certain generation. You got to, bring home the paycheck and support the wife and kids, but also have a life with the wife and kids. But you're doing film and television, and the hours are crazy, and it continues to be. I mean, our kids one's out of high school and going to college in the fall. The other one's got another year in high school, and it continues to be the battle of trying to find and do interesting work, but realize that that's not, and I don't remember who to attribute this to, but you're not going to be on your deathbed wishing you'd have made one more movie. You want to live your life and be connected to your family and your friends, and that's what's important. So finding that balance is what's important.
So you were almost 40 when you started working in television?
Yeah, I was. I turned 40 during the tour of. I did basically 5 years on Broadway, 90 to 95. I was born in 55. Do the math. And 94, I did a Neil Simon play, original cast of a Neil Simon play on Broadway.
Which one?
Laughter on the 23rd Floor.
Oh my gosh!
With Nathan Lane.
I was going to say Nathan Lane
Mark
again.
Lynn Baker, John Slattery. Lou Stadlin, Randy Gra- I mean, genius cast, Jerry Zaks directing. I mean, it was unbelievable. Great experience. And then did the tour with some of that cast, plus my wife, who I had met on a different tour, who was cast as the little blonde bimbo that I didn't really work with in the play. But anyway, yeah, we were on tour in '95 for she actually managed to somehow pull off a surprise 40th birthday. We weren't married yet, but we were living in sin. And I forgot now what the question was. But, yeah, I was 40. Yeah, and it was really after that tour that I came back to my agent and said, because I've been working with these guys, Slattery, Mark Lynn Baker, these guys who were doing film and television as well as theater and going back and forth. And I went to my agent and I said, I've been 5 years on Broadway and it's been great, but it's been, 500 performances of the same thing, and I'm not rich. And these guys walk out to their mailbox and go, oh, look, $400. Oh, look, $1,200. And I thought, let's do some of that.
Yeah.
And so it was, it was a really conscious decision to not do another play and to hope. And then, remarkable, fortunate things happened. And I did a guest spot on Law and Order and Homicide. And a year later, I'm doing Oz and Law and Order.
That actually ties into a question we have from Jeff. Sorry, no last name. Jeff, over there. Okay. Oh, wait, no, I'm sorry. This question is for AK. Or maybe that's a J. It must be for you because has winning an Oscar at this stage of your career been an advantage versus winning earlier in your career? In terms of decision making.
Well, for me personally, I can't even consider. Well, first of all, if people had put me in front of a camera when I was 28 years old, I wouldn't have known what to do at all. I learned through painful experience, and I mean for the audience, how to do what we do and do it reasonably well over the years. But also I think, going back to what I was talking about, I was 36 when I met my wife, 40 when we got married and started, doing film and television. I wasn't ready before that, and I wasn't ready for, just being a grown-up before that, being in a committed relationship, being a father, all those kinds of things. So I think for me, if it had happened when I was in my 20s, I would have ended up like James Dean. And that it happened when it did, is still miraculous to me, because it's not something that I ever had as a goal or even thought about during the whole whiplash. Like, we were going to film festivals and people were like, "Oh my God, this movie is amazing," and the distributors are like, "So J.K., it's going to be, you're going to have to do this and this and this and this," and I was like, I don't. Really? That's just weird, because I just show up and go to work, and then when the work's done, I go home. I don't go talk about the movie, or I just act in the movie. So that it was a whole new thing.
When did you know it was going to be a thing?
Whiplash specifically? Yes. I knew when Jason Reitman sent me the script for the short film and the feature and said, "You got to read this." It was coming from him, so I knew it was going to be good. And when I read it, I was like, "Oh my God, who is this guy? This is one of the greatest things I've ever read in my entire life." And I knew it had a chance to be a brilliant movie. And then when I met Damien, who I was kind of expecting, his name is Damien Chazelle, and he wrote a movie about jazz. So we set up a meeting, and I was kind of looking for Antoine Fuqua. Just based on that alone, and then so I'm looking around the Daily Grill for because I was a minute late, and this pimply faced little Jewish boy from New Jersey is standing up going, and I went, "Oh my!" And he's going to direct it. Ooh. I hope this kid's not in over his head, and then, but we fell in love with. I fell in love with the script. We fell in love with each other. We made the short film. Of course, it's a short film, so nobody cares. But it did get him the budget for the feature. And 15 months later, when we were making the feature, I knew it was an extraordinary piece of work. I knew Miles was doing great work, and he and I were simpatico and having a great time. That Damien had the chops to direct it, and that it was going to be a really, really good movie. But I just didn't think in those terms, oh, now it's going to go win a bunch of awards. Yeah. I was just like, this is an amazing movie.
You didn't even go to the Sundance Film Festival that year, did you?
No, I was here doing a sitcom and couldn't get a day off.
You're kidding.
No, what are you going to do? I was doing a show called Growing Up Fisher, which was a lovely little sitcom. DJ Nash, who's a wonderful guy that hopefully people will get a chance to work with someday. I was blind. It was the Blind Dad show that lived for 13 episodes. You can't get 2 days off in the middle of a sitcom season. Actually, I was number one on the call sheet with that.
That was one thing I was thinking of. Yeah. Well, that's when I knew it was going to be a thing, because I think Anthony Bresnikan tweeted out of the festival that J.K. Simmons is going to win the Oscar, and then he followed it with a tweet like, "He looks like an Oscar." And
I had not heard that before. Meaning I have no genitalia? That's not a compliment.
Sorry, Anthony. I'm pretty sure it was Anthony. I credit him actually with really
with the fact that I should have thanked him instead of
exactly instead of Damien.
I didn't know. Yeah.
By the way, can I ask? And if you don't want to answer this, well, I can't make you. Yeah, I'm not going to ask you to join Twitter. I was going to ask if I've been trying for 4 years.
Yeah, it's not going to
happen. What do you think happens after that last scene in Whiplash? Do these two, are they friendly now, or do they go beat the crap out of each other again?
I think Miles' character dies broken alone before he turns 30.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I think he ascends like a comet and comes crashing down like one as well. And I think my character continues to be a miserable bastard who cannot find his own happiness because there is no perfection on this planet.
So we get to see their last happy moment together, basically.
Is it a happy moment? That's
That's what's interesting.
And that's what,
Yeah.
and that's the first, when Damien and I sat down that first day to talk about that, my first question was, we're not going to tell people how to feel at the end of this movie, are we? And he said, no, absolutely. And we were like, okay, good. We knew right then we wanted to tell the story together.
I'm exhilarated, but I don't know that I'm happy.
Yeah,
for that.
no,
Yeah.
and believe me, I've had people. I have a friend who's an orchestra, classical orchestra conductor who called me, after seeing the movie, said, "Yes, finally somebody gets it. That's how you have to drive someone to be exceptional, and thank you for sending that message out there." And I was like, "Darko, dude, that's not the movie most people are seeing, It's in the mix there somewhere, but that's the beauty. That's a big part of the beauty of that movie.
So you're working on season 2 of Counterpart now.
We are
can say
indeed.
that. Tell us everything that happens in the new season.
Here's what happens. One Howard gets blown up. No. No, I will tell you nothing about what happens, except that it gets more complex. It's a show, I think, all of you just saw the first episode. Many of you have seen the show. It's a show for people who are willing to really pay attention, and it's complex and confusing at times. Believe me, it was for me. It gets more complex in season 2. Somebody commented recently about season 1 that that there were so many great roles for strong women in the show, and I was like, wow, that's like exponentially more the case in season 2. We have Betty Gabriel joins the cast.
Oh my gosh, she's amazing.
And in this great character, and and the ones that we've already met, Sarah Sayako and Olivia Williams and Nazanin, others continue. So anyway, yeah, that's one facet of the show that continues to develop and go to like really, really cool places. And now we're at that point in season 2 where, and we knew going in that we had 2 seasons, which was an unbelievable blessing.
That's right.
Yeah. Because Starz, the reason we were with Starz is because when MRC was pitching it to networks, there was a lot of interest from a variety of the usual people you would think. And Starz, we got into kind of a bidding war, and Starz said, all right, look, we'll take 2 seasons up front, period. And a marriage was made. So we don't know that there's going to be a 3rd season, but we're kind of that. They're already talking about what might happen in season 3.
And you'd be up for it?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I signed the usual 6-year deal, so I would have no problem with 60 episodes of Counterpart.
Kind of a weird question, but do you prefer Howard Alpha or Howard Prime?
Well, Howard, the kinder, gentler Howard is in the script is Howard in the alpha world, and then the sort of more badass Howard is called Prime. That's the Prime world. Which is only a script designation, really. I've always viewed Howard, especially because I read the first 19 pages of the thing, thinking he was the protagonist of the piece, and not knowing about the parallel world thing. He's the protagonist to me. It's his story, essentially, although it branches out into a million different directions. And he's the guy I empathize with and identify with and sort of care for like a puppy, the most. But the other Howard, referred to as Prime, the badass super spy Howard, is just more fun to play, and to be that guy, to pretend to have that swagger that I wish I had in real life, where you're walking into whatever situation and you can handle it, which there's 30 guys on the planet that can actually do that.
Yeah.
One of whom I had an extended fight sequence with last week.
Oh, can you reveal, or we have to wait?
No, a stunt guy named Buster who was awesome. But when you as an actor, especially of a certain age, when you get into we're gonna do this big stunt thing and like, yeah, great, yeah, I'll fight. I've trained as a boxer, and you get into it with like a dude who can fight and who has a neck as big as my thigh. it's and we couldn't use the double because it wasn't. I had like a tank top on, and it was like you can't match everything. So it was like 6 hours of banging and bruising and realizing that this guy is the guy I would want with me in that situation. I'm not that guy.
So how does? Oh, you know what? Never mind. I was about to ask. You guys haven't seen. Some of you might not have seen the full season. I shouldn't get spoilery.
No spoilers.
Yes. Go home, and if you haven't, watch the whole thing because it just gets better and better. Thank you so much for being here. Congratulations on another great performance.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.